Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Return to the Realm, a rereaders podcast for the Realm of the Elderlings series by Rob and Hobb. I'm Kayiu, here with Alex and Leah, and today we're going to be covering chapters 10 through 14? 15? 14.
14.
Of Mad Ship, the second book in the Life Ship Traders trilogy. The past two episodes have been sort of just building up, or the past two, not chapters, past two episodes, have been just building up, giving us some, transitions from the end of the last book and some set pieces. And we did have the one big event in Kenneth's leg getting chopped off. But other than that, things have just been making their way into place. But this section, we have lots of things happening, especially front-loaded in the first few chapters in this section, with Althea's homecoming and just the general trajectory that Bingtown is moving towards. But yeah, before we get into talking about all of that, this is a spoilers all podcast, not just for this book, not just for this trilogy, but the entire Realm of the Elderlings cycle. So, if you haven't read all 16 books in the series, do that and then come back. Otherwise, let's just get into it. With Chapter 10, Homecoming. This chapter covers basically what it sounds like. Althea returns home to find out what has been going on with Ronica, Keffria, and Malta in her absence. And she also has a telling conversation with Amber, who catches her up to speed on some of the more macro level things that have been happening in Bingtown, because Ronica is currently in family mode.
Ronica pissed me off in this chapter as usual. But this time it was because when she was talking to Althea about slavery, Althea was shocked and disgusted that her family was involved, and Ronica was like, I know slavery's wrong, but what's the alternative? Being poor?
That is an accurate reenactment of the conversation for sure.
He's such a bad person. I hate her.
She definitely is not opposed to child abuse anymore, and it doesn't seem like she's very much opposed to slavery either.
No, if it benefits her, then it's worth it.
I feel like
what can I do? Meanwhile, her family's has a council vote, and she's just like, one vote won't matter.
Yeah.
So it's so frustrating.
Every vote counts.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's like what... it's the exact same theme from the end of the previous book where both Gantry and Wintra were like, I can't do anything, oh well, and then evil flourishes.
Mm-hmm.
Serilla has the same thought in this section, where she's bummed about, not in this chapter, but this section we read, she's bummed about how bad the satrapy has gotten, and she's like, but I can't do anything about it, I'm just one little old heart companion.
Kill him and take it over. Become a dictator.
I honestly think that I feel like of all the people, Serilla is sort of the most justified in thinking that way, because
she actually is trying to change
effect change. It's just stuff has gotten so systemically bad that honestly the best thing she could do is at this point jump ship and find an external solution.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I agree.
Which is what she ends up doing, basically in the end. But God, that or she could just kill Cosgo, but that would obviously not end up well for her.
Look, if he's under the influence and just so happens to fall off the ship, I don't think anybody's going to question it.
She could always poison him and turn him into a llama.
Yes. That is true.
Who would be his Kronk then? He doesn't have anyone to be his Kronk. He would just...
Yeah.
No.
Or what's the name of the person who actually helps him? Who helps Cosgo?
Pacha,
that's what it was. Yeah.
That's Malta.
That's actually accurate.
She tries her best. She beats him a little bit, she berates him, but she gets him where he needs to be.
Mm.
Yep.
Well, where he needs to be is at the bottom of the sea or in a serpent's stomach. But, close enough, close enough.
Yeah.
I wish that he would have drank the river water instead of Keiki or Keki or whatever her name is.
I always call her Kiki in my head, even though I definitely think that's not right.
I was calling her Keiki when I was reading it this time, but that's the Hawaiian word for children. So I was like,
Okay.
that's not fitting.
When you said cakey, I just thought it was like, damn, she got some cake on her or whatever. But yeah, like, I don't need all of my stories to like end with the heroes won and all the bad guys died, but like
It would have been nice.
I'm reading a fantasy series to like see things turn out somewhat well, y'all. Like you give just a little bit of death for the satrap, just a little bit as a treat.
Let him die like for a minute, and then he can be brought back, and maybe he's got a renewed sense of life, where his father's spirit came and stole his body instead. Like, please give us something good.
And it's really like frustrating also the way that like Amber talks about him later on, where it's like he was someone who was he was a poor innocent boy who was led astray by all these other people, and now he's controlled by his addictions. And it's like kind of, but not quite. Like at this point, he is fully, as a person, he has become independently evil.
Yes.
And like you can say like, oh, if he'd be put on a different path, he'd be a different person. But like it's kind of true of every evil, and he is lots of the actions he takes are ones that like we know that like obviously like there's the influence of the Chalcedians or whatever, but he like actively entertains the ideas, or like he's actively like, yeah, it's like he doesn't ever think against them. And he had people like Serilla around him. He had positive influences. He just chose to focus and indulge in the negative ones. So like I don't know.
Well, and what he does to Serilla is like an act of inflicting intentional misery upon another human being.
Mm-hmm.
Harm.
And there's like no coming back from that, you know? Like you might as well murder somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But he would write it off as, oh, I wasn't the one who actually did it, so I'm innocent in this situation.
Which is really funny because that's what Kyle is accusing Wintro of doing in this chapter.
Yeah. Or like he thinks it's Cirilla's fault because he's like, well, she chose. All she had to do was sleep with me, and then I wouldn't have blah blah blah. So it's not my fault.
Oh, he's gross.
Yeah, he's awful.
There's kind of a lot of grossness in this section, I feel.
Yeah.
There were some icky things with Kenneth that made me feel really gross.
Me too.
But we'll get there. We've got some icky things with Keffria in this section too, especially in this chapter. She's kind of a bitch.
Oh, yeah, she's always a bitch.
I think it's the next chapter where she, like, low-key slut shames her sister yet again. But in this one, Althea is just thinking to herself, and she's like, Keffria had believed her capable of disgracing the family name simply for her own pleasures. That's exactly what she's thought for years, since Althea came to her after the incident on Vivacia, where she was like, please help me. And Keffria was like, wow, you slut.
Right.
Speaking of Althea, I do feel really bad. Like, she's missed so much being gone. And, like, so much has happened to the Vestroids, and like, their lives moved on so much after she left that they're like new people almost, even though they're more than all of them are pretty still crappy people. They have not grown very much, but they've had to change a lot.
Yeah,
Bingtown as a whole is very different. Like, it reminded me, have you guys heard that metaphor that, like, if you try to put a frog in boiling water, they'll jump out right away. But if you put it in cold water and turn the heat up, it'll just stay in there till it boils.
Yeah.
Like, that's what Bingtown reminded me of, because all the people that have been staying there have made excuses for the changes, or like, this is what we have to do to adapt, or it's easier to just go along with this than fight back against these changes that Jamalia's putting in. But then when the Taniras and Althea show up and they've been gone, they're like shocked and outraged and horrified.
Yeah, they're like, it's easier to accept these small things than to fight back right now. Like, we'll stand our ground when something serious gets in our way, when they try and do serious things. But then they're letting Chalice, like, warships dock in their area.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, this is fine.
And Ronica's like, wow, Tanira's kind of a fucking loser for not paying the taxes. Like, everyone's doing it. You just kind of have to. And it's like,
yeah.
No.
Hello?
It's kind of wild that she doesn't know. Like, I feel like she didn't know that the, like, warship and stuff was on the dock. Like, does Ronica not go down there when... I don't think she even really went down there when Vivacia was docked there. Like, she steers clear of the shore.
I mean, it sounds like she's been stuck at home, basically, like, trying to entertain the Rain Wilders. So,
and trying to freaking keep Malta at home instead of, like, out and about with all these guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, with Serwin, but yeah.
Yes.
It's also so annoying when, like, Ronica's, like, being patronizing towards Althea. Like, I suppose this is a shock to you. I have seen the gradual slide, but you return to see us at the bottom of our fortunes. And it's like, that is because you have excluded Althea from the family business at every turn.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're like, Althea, why didn't you stay and know stuff and help the family when I pushed you away and took away the one thing that you could do to help the family? Like, come on now.
I wonder if Ronica, like, subconsciously gave Keffria all of the holdings and stuff because she knew that Keffria was more, like, malleable and that she could kind of still hold control over everything. But if she were to give, like, the ship and stuff to Althea, that Althea would go out on her own and, like, think for herself instead of just listen to what Mother Dearest says.
I mean, no, absolutely. From the way that she's talked about, she's like, Althea's, like, impulsive and just like Ephraim and, like, run away or whatever. And it's like, it's obvious that she's just, like...
making excuses.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, basically, the Vestrits don't deserve Althea. Like, Althea should just run off and let them, like, dig their own graves at this point.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, on a positive note, though, when Althea was coming back to her home, and she, like, goes to the kitchen and stuff and hears all the gossip, that reminded me of, like, Buckkeep Castle and Cook, when, like, Fitz was hearing gossip about, like, oh my god, how am I forgetting her name? I've been in this series too long. All I can think of is Keffria Kyle Candid. No, what's it?
Ketrigan?
Ketrigan, yeah. How did I forget Ketrigan? I was just like all these K names in this book. I was like,
I thought it was some obscure thing. That's why I didn't name her, because I'm like, it's got to be something that, like.
I was like, well, there's only like 3 main female characters in Farseer, so it has to be.
We're taking a shot, yeah.
Something in this section reminded me of Ketrigan, but I can't remember what it is. I'll notice it when.
Was it the Vicious Vixen?
Yes. I was thinking, I'm like, that is totally a like ship that I could see being a real one in the Six Duchies, named after Ketrigan for sure. Like, in honor of her, not to be like.
Not to be mean
or anything.
Yeah, no, that's like definitely. What was the name of the coastal place where she, like, fought barefoot with her longsword or whatever? Like,
was it Burns?
It was something that started with a B, but yeah, like, she definitely earned the title of vicious vixen after that one. I 100% believe it.
Yeah. It's so funny that he like thought of that randomly.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if Hobb put it in like for us. Because
Yeah.
we love our queen. She's the real queen.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Who would even be the fake queen? There are no fake queens to even compare.
The one that's in our real world.
Oh, that one.
Ketrican is
you mean the one that's no longer in our real world? Okay, cool.
Ketrican's the only monarch I recognize.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, it's because she's not much of
She's a sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, what's the name of the food Instagram that makes like food based on Farseer
Recipe
stuff?
from Buck.
Recipes from Buck. I wonder if they made some of the stuff described in this chapter because it's so vividly described, and I just like, I hadn't eaten all day before, or not all day, but like I hadn't eaten dinner, and I was reading this in the middle of the night, and I was like, oh, I'm feeling grumbly.
So good. I always so impressed with people who can describe food and make it sound so yummy. Like it sounds so much more delicious than it is in real life. Like if you were to get that at like a restaurant or something, you'd be like, wow, this is like fine. Like
right.
Yeah, and even Althea, like she describes this like, I didn't get the best cuts. This was just sort of like stuff for a messenger. But like because she's so hungry, it's like, it's like it's like so soft and buttery, and like I had these sugar dumplings, and it's like, yeah, it's more than just like the, what do you call it, like the tactile stuff of like the food, or like the stuff that you get with your senses. It's like she describes the experience of it in a cool way. Yeah. So do we have anything else to say about Ronica and Co, or can we move to the Amber section of this chapter?
I have, I think, one more.
Frodo.
Just about Althea. I think that the way that she described the Cuprous, like, house crest was hilarious. She's like, it looked something like a chicken with a hat, and I just cracked up when I saw that. I was like, that is ridiculous.
I missed that. That's so funny. The rooster crown? No. Chicken hat.
Yes.
When do
Wait. Also, this reminds me. Okay, y'all keep talking. I'll be back in just a second.
When do Fitz and the Fool, don't they see the rooster crown in like a vision? Or does just Fitz see it?
Yeah, I think that the minstrel or the white prophet or whatever was wearing it.
Oh, so
in the vision when they went to, like when they were on the way to
on the skill road.
Yeah. They both shared that vision or something like that. Or like
So you would think
it shared it when he touched the Fool or something like that.
You'd think that the Fool would recognize that crown in the
For sure. But I don't think the Fool has seen, like I don't think the Fool gets, or like Amber doesn't get to go to like the Vesperite house. So I feel like she's never seen the like Cupresses or their like crest at all.
Yeah, you're right.
And whenever, I'm sure like when they were leaving and stuff, she was probably like on Paragon. So she wasn't even in like the town of Bingtown to see it. And it was just those like chance missings, you know?
Right.
Okay. Speaking of like chicken hat, that just reminded me of this beanie that my aunt made me, which is, it's a chicken.
Your video is black, so I can't see it. Send a picture.
No. Okay. I'll send a picture afterwards. But for all the viewers, you can see my beautiful chicken beanie hat right here. And if you're listening on audio, I'll send a picture of this to Leah so we can put it on Instagram. Yeah.
I forgot to post my bookshelf on Instagram, so I definitely need to do that.
Yeah, on to the next section of this chapter. where we have Althea on the way back from meeting with Ronica and her family, meets up with Amber, who's like, hey, stuff has been going down in Bingtown as a whole, not just with your family. And Althea's like, I know, we need to do something about it. And Amber's like, thank God.
I feel like it's kind of like through Althea that Amber can have a say and like do all of those things in well, like within the trader community. So she is so grateful that Althea's back, I'm sure. And that Althea agrees and is like, yeah, stuff's getting really bad.
The way that Amber makes Althea like report to her and not leave out a single detail reminded me a lot of Fitz reporting to Shade or Verity.
Or even Burrich when it comes to like taking care of all of the animals.
Yep.
Especially, like, I think in the next chapter, like, Althea is like, oh yeah, there's a dragon on the island. And Amber's like, why didn't you mention that? And Althea's like, it wasn't important to me. That's such a Fitz thing. That is...
Yep.
Well, and in the next chapter, Althea says something. She says, talking to you is a balancing act. And that is exactly something that Fitz would complain to the Fool about. For sure. Like that, those are Fitz's words in Althea's mouth.
Yeah. You make me think before I say my words. How dare you? But yeah, there's such a Fool line here of, how old must I be before I learn? There's no time, there's never any time. Tomorrow may never come, but today's are linked inexorably in a chain. And now is the only time we have to divert disaster. And especially like the today's are linked together. That felt like such a... I'm 100% sure the Fool said a similar thing in Farseer. So if you were quick on the draw again, I feel like you could start making connections.
Yeah, the Fools definitely said something about like today is the only time that we have or something like that.
Mm.
I love how like the true kind of personality of Beloved comes out when they're like saying things out loud just kind of to themselves almost, and other people are just around to hear it.
Mm.
Because that's what this felt like. This definitely wasn't Amber telling it to Althea. This was the Fool or Beloved saying it to themselves.
Yeah, they're like, fucking, they won't understand anyways.
Right.
But yeah, I had like my last two notes are just like stuff that felt like stuff that Amber said that felt like relevant to the real world as well. Like Amber mentions, like, if human life can be measured in counting coins, and that worth can be diminished a copper at a time until no value is left. And like, obviously, this applies. Like, she's talking about slavery, but I think this also applies sort of to like just like the idea of labor in general. Like, not to get too political on Maine, but I think that like in certain ways, I feel like the way that capitalism makes it that like you're trying to race to the bottom in terms of how little you can pay people to do a job means that you can stop caring about the actual people involved and just start thinking of it as like numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So,
especially when there's such a big gap and like distance and separation between the people who are making those decisions and the people who are doing the actual work, and they never meet. And that's kind of how it is here. Like the people who benefit from the slaves don't really have to associate with them. They can hire people to do that. And then they just can take it, like set it out of their mind. And they're like, oh, well, like it can't be that bad.
mm-hmm. And like obviously, like they are like the difference in both those situations is that someone who's working in a job has like ideally more agency, but like for some people, especially in like certain like if you're in like certain like fields, like there really isn't agency to move to another job. Like it's like you do this or you do worse than Ronica's living in poverty. You just straight up die because you don't have resources.
Yeah.
So in the same way that like the slaves technically have the agency to like run away or like kill their masters, but then that would limit their options in other ways. So like,
And if they get caught, they get killed as well. So it's just another death sentence for them.
mhm,
Just a quicker one than living your life out a slave.
mhm. And like in a similar vein, Amber says to Captain Tanira because Tanira's like seems like people I don't really oppose slavery like I do, and it's like Amber's like, well, if you were to put on slaves' rags, you would hear the voices of those who would oppose slavery most. Like, don't ignore that group of people. And I think that like that's like a good shout to like actually engage with the people that you are trying to represent and help instead of just like being like I am speaking for you and I care about your issue and your rights and issues, because I feel like there's lots of times, especially like even in real life, where there's like people who have like a misplaced sense of not justice but a misplaced sense of like I am doing good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they say that they're on the side of the slaves, but even they don't really see them as human enough to like have their own say in what's happening to them.
Amber's the only one to really like meet them at their level.
And I think it's just because Amber's been through so much already, like so much horrible things. So they're like, let me connect with these people on this level and see if there's something that I can help them with.
I think there's also like this feeling of like the idea of roles, right? Like there's like, well, I'm a trader. That means I have like status and stuff. And like how would I be able to relate to these people? And Amber's like, I have lived like a dozen lives by this point. Like,
Yeah.
we would just like such a notable thing in this chapter about how Amber is like navigating, talking, and like gaining Captain Tanira and Ophelia's confidence and all of that. Like just candid enough to be trustworthy and like still just candid enough to not actually have to reveal any details about themselves. So
Like a last name.
mhm.
Amber the Beadmaker. That's my name.
Honestly, like I know like you could just be Amber, like Beadmaker could be the last name. Like
Yeah.
I know like so many like German people who are like Schumacher or stuff like that, or like maybe not that one specifically, but I know like a bunch of people who have like names like that.
And I guess back in that time, it probably wouldn't be unheard of, especially because Amber looks so different that you can tell she's not from Bingtown. Like the customs of her people could be so different to them, and they would just like have to accept that that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what Molly's last name is. Isn't it Molly Chandler? Because she works in
a Chandler, yeah.
Yeah, yep.
My last note for this section is just a quote from Amber again. And she says, "Oh, I've known my fair share of intrigues and plotting. I find it all distasteful." And that is definitely true because all of the plotting from Clarice that she sees and all the plotting from the people in the Six Duchies, from Shrewd and Shade and Regal, like, they've been through a lot.
Yeah. Just
and
like
this isn't even close to the end.
It's like, well, I've come here far from any sort of government or like any sort of like centralized government so that I can be free of these intrigue. And it's like, actually, what if Bingtown Council? And it's like, no.
Yeah. Just kidding.
Also unrelated, but when you started that note, you said like my last and I thought you're gonna be like my last name and just start off on like something there, and I was like,
No, I wish I had a fun story. My last name actually means satrap, which means I should be the ruler.
You would be a better ruler than Cosgo.
I mean, that's a low bar. That's an incredibly low
That is
bar.
true. I would probably be too overwhelmed with the amount of power, and I would like try and pass it off to other people. I would have to like give them tests, and like they'd have to do an obstacle course and stuff so that I know they're worthy.
An obstacle course.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good way
Just
to
like
test people's skills.
just American Ninja Warrior, but for Jamel.
Yes.
Mhm. Okay, let's move to chapter 11, Judgment. This chapter follows cleanly from the previous one. It's just sort of, it's just sort of, we're getting more of Ronica and Malta's perspective, while the last chapter was all Althea, but it's continuing the same line of like, Althea's home, Bingtown's going down the drain, what do we do?
Yeah.
And while we're talking about like the transition between chapters, I love how like the last chapter ends with Ophelia finding out that Vivacia is being used as a slave ship, and basically questioning Althea, like, how could your family let this happen? And Althea's just like, I don't know. And then this chapter opens up with Keffria asking Ronica, like, where's Althea? What is she doing? And Ronica's like, I don't know. I love the transition with like both of these I don't knows, and like Althea's being so much more consequential than Ronica's. Like, who fucking cares where Althea is right now?
I know.
Meanwhile, like Ophelia's thing of like, how could they let a living being become a slaver? Is like, yeah, no, that's pretty valid.
It's still wild to me that Ronica like didn't care more about what they were doing to Vivacia, especially because she did have that like childlike mentality at the beginning. Like it's so wild that she just let them go off and do that.
She's
I
like,
don't think that Ronica cares that much about Vivacia. I don't think she sees her. I think she sees her as the ship that took her husband away from her.
I just still think it's so annoying and ridiculous, and I don't
Also,
like
Ronica thinks slaves are fine as long as they make it so she's not poor.
And if they had a good reason to become slaves, she's like,
Yeah.
it had to have been like your fault. Victim blaming the slaves.
Can't have too high of expectations of her.
I guess that's true. I forgot who it was. I wonder if she was a better person when Ephraim was alive. Or if she'd always been this way and Ephraim just got to see the best sides of her because they spent most of their time together in bed.
I mean, it could also just be that like she's the type of person where like when things are going well and she has agency, these things don't show up. But then when things start going wrong, she has no idea how to cope with it, and like more like these sort of moral questions aren't likely to come up unless you're like actually like put in a situation where you're forced to make those decisions.
Yeah.
Right.
Like it's not like. So anyways, hypothetically, what is your like? And she obviously thinks that she's against slaves. Like all of her internal monologue is like slaves are bad, but like she doesn't have the strength of will to like make that into a conviction rather than like, I guess I kind of feel this way.
Well, and in the last book, like she did say that the reason she's like, no slavery is because Ephraim stood so firmly in like the belief that slavery is this horrible thing and he's the reason, and like he condemned it so much that she was like, oh well, I guess like I should support him, he probably knows what's best. But like now that he's not there to be that strong voice of reason, she kind of lets herself go.
She doesn't have to justify her actions to him anymore because Kyle and Keffria are just gonna not care.
Mm-hmm.
friend was almost like her conscience, and he's gone now. So
She is the best of the best rights.
Yeah, she has no willpower to like stand up to what she knows is right, which makes her just as bad as Gantry, who's on the slave ship, even though he doesn't like slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I feel like lots of these situations are like, there's obviously like degrees of it where it's like it's easier to judge, but also in real life, like how much would we be able to make these decisions? But I feel like both the degree of the thing that is bad, slavery, and the degree of what would actually happen to them if they stuck to their morals. Oh no, we have to live like poorly, or just like it's not like it.
There's no
It's not like again, it's like not like Serilla's choice where she doesn't really have a choice. It's like either I oppose this and I die, or I live and like I don't make an impact, or like I live and I try to do like I do what I can within my means. It's just like Ronica and Gantry had actual choices, and they tricked themselves into believing they didn't.
Right.
Which sucks because it's like there are so many people like Serilla who are like in a system where like they don't actually have agency, and the people who do need to act. So it's yeah.
It's like using privilege.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And like they have the literal privilege of being on the council. It's like a tangible physical thing of their privilege. Yeah. And the life ship is also like a literal tangible physical thing of their privilege that they have as a trader.
On a lighter note, Selden is still alive.
Yeah, I think this is the first mention of Selden that we get.
In this book, the first mention of Selden he's not even on screen. Keffria is just glad that he's asleep and he's in home, like at his bed. And that happens over 200 pages into the book.
What's he been doing during all of these parties?
I know.
I guess. And then Malta thinks that she's like feeling sorry for herself, and she has the thought it was Malta and Selden that would be most affected by their grandparents' mess, or whatever it is. I don't remember the exact verbiage, but
I kind of feel like Hobb is like not focusing on Selden as much, so that it isn't, because there's already so many characters, and she doesn't want us to like it be like hard to keep up. But I feel like only mentioning him like once every 200 pages just makes it so that it's like, who the fuck is that?
Right. Well, Keffria is forgetting Selden, and Malta's forgetting Wintro. Like, he's not even part of the family anymore. So that whole side of the family is not all there, I think.
Speaking of not all there, I'm just gonna skip. There's like lots of juicy stuff in like the Amber section here, but we're already talking about Keffria and Malta. So let's just jump to the second half of this chapter where Althea returns at night to talk with Ronica and Keffria and Malta about like next steps for the family. And immediately they are huge assholes to her in every way possible. The thing that you were mentioning, Alex, last time about like the Keffria slut shaming Althea, that happens here.
Yeah.
And then talking about like, have you no pride, no care for your family name? And it's like, hello?
And Keffria's like not that subtle about it either. Like she says something, I don't remember what exactly she says, but Malta picks up on it and is like,
she's like, there's a secret there. Yes.
He knows.
Yeah.
Like Mother knows something about Aunt Althea that's dirty.
Mm-hmm. It's just like, she was like, you were there with the sailors conversing, and sometimes more than conversing.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's like that's the type of shit where like it's polite because you're not actually saying what you're saying with your full chest, but it's so obvious and you're just a coward.
Right. And it's a threat, too. It's like, oh, there's a veiled threat in there of, if you don't go along with us and what we want,
I'll tell mother.
I can say more.
Mm-hmm. Because even Malta's like, yeah, secrets are power.
Well, and she says that to justify, like, Malta's courtship of Rain and, like, dressing like a woman and stuff like that, when, like, she was opposed to that in the first place anyways. And if that's what happened to Althea when she was Malta's age, like, shouldn't Keffria be more worried about that happening to her daughter as well, instead of bringing up the past that's dead and gone?
I mean, to Keffria, that past is incredibly present. She, in the sense of, like, she sees Althea dressing up as a boy and going sailing as, you are still indulging in the same activities.
Yeah.
And, like, obviously, even to Althea, like, that past isn't dead and gone because, like, she still has trauma over it. So, like, it should be, but then, because of Keffria, all of this shit is happening.
She couldn't even enjoy her one-night stand with Brashen because she thought about what her sister would think.
Mm-hmm. I think that's such an interesting angle to take, because I feel like normally that sort of condemnation comes from the parent, right? And it's supposed to be like your siblings who are the same generation who support you through it because they're also having similar experiences. And it's like such a fucked up betrayal that it's Keffria who's doing that. Yeah.
And your siblings are supposed to be like your partners. So like it's siblings against the parents when like little fights and stuff come up. It's like you defending your siblings, and instead it was like your siblings turning on you.
Yeah, this fucking section is 3 generations of the Vestrits ganging up on Althea, and it's like, hello?
Yeah.
And it's like, you guys didn't learn from last time. Last time you all ganged up on her, she
left for a year.
And then she comes back, and you're like,
already picking at her.
Yeah.
Yeah, Malta says some shit. I don't remember what she says some like vile shit, and then she like thinks, she's like, "What does Althea even add to the family? She's a dead branch of the family tree. No like husband, no children." I'm like, Malta,
fucking savage. She definitely is not doing so well in her belief department right now. She also says one of the very last lines in this chapter is her thinking to herself, she would not let him, which is Kyle, walk about vulnerable to the treachery of these power-hungry women. Like,
she has it so
like
bad.
that's you. Like, yeah. How do you not see that you are condemning yourself in this condemnation of the rest of your family?
Well, and like she is very much in line with the like Chalcedian view of life, but thank God she has to ship with them for a little bit, and it changes her like mindset, because oh my, this is how women turn on each other. This is ridiculous. She'd rather spy on them and stuff to go tattle to her father than help them, because she thinks they're the enemy. And like, I understand why she thinks that based on the way that like Keffria and Ronica have treated her, but Althea's been gone for this whole time. She should not lump her in with that yet. Like, cut her some slack first.
Mm-hmm.
But power-hungry women.
And I also think it's interesting because like Althea is sort of the only one to treat Malta as like, I almost feel like as like who she is, which is like a teenager. Like,
yeah, definitely.
Like when Malta says something insulting, she's just like, what the fuck? Like, don't.
She just like moves past it. She's like, I'm not gonna give you the satisfaction of like giving you the attention for this. And she looks directly at Keffria.
That's probably why Malta like is so quick to hate her though. But I really feel like everything Malta does is a cry for attention because she's so neglected.
For sure.
Literally in this chapter, she's like, Ronica, Keffria, and Althea like close the family circle, and only Malta noticed that she was excluded, and it's just like, okay.
Well, and when she's looking back on her time, like with Rain and the Rainwild traders being there and how the party was, she's so much more attuned to all of the attention that she's getting from like Serwin and from her friends and how everyone's like jealous. And she like notices every single little thing about that because that's the only attention that she gets. That's really sad.
I feel bad for her, even though she's annoying.
Even though she has some very bad beliefs right now about and like bad thoughts about women, I do still feel so bad for her. And
she's just parroting what she's heard from her father, and like her women in her life have not been nice to her. So it's like, why would she
have any loyalty or
have good ideas about women?
Thoughts. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I feel sorry for her, but also she's an asshole. But also I feel sorry for her that she is an asshole.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, like, her last lines in this chapter go hard as fuck. Like, maybe the hardest lines in the series so far. Malta showed her bitter smile only to the dying fire. She had promises of her own to keep. And it's like, oh, shit. Like, has any character sounded that cool in this series? Like, let's be honest. I don't think any character has sounded that cool.
Be Malta's, like, villain.
Yeah. Like, her Joker moment.
Yes. Malta really could have gone either way. Like, she could have been such a good villain or such a good guy.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad she turned into a good guy because I really like Malta a lot. And I did not want to see her become bad.
I think my favorite villain in this series is Regal.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Well, he sometimes makes me laugh because he's so stupid.
Yeah.
And, like, all the other ones are, like, evil.
Oh, Regal is evil.
Regal's like a cartoon bad guy. You know what I mean?
Kind of, but he's also, like... okay, that's fair.
Tortured our boy to death, so...
Yeah, I guess, like, Regal is in, like, that tier of, like, villain where it's just, like, you hate him because he's hateable. And then there's like Kenneth, Kyle, the Satrap, all like represent real things. Like they hit a little too close to home. So yeah, for me, my favorite is the Pale Woman because she's just the villain.
Yeah.
Obviously, she doesn't get like that much screen time, but like that's kind of why I like her.
She doesn't need very much screen time, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Like just her looming presence over the whole, like, I guess, first 3 trilogies. Yeah, Malta as a villain would go hard as fuck. Someone should write a AU of that.
We have a lot of fanfic requests.
Yeah.
We do.
Of varying quality.
Yes.
But look, okay. The simplest one would just be the Satrap dies in some way. Your choice. Literally just a life to trade, just at some point in Ship of Destiny, the Satrap dies. Surprise me.
Have you guys seen the picture of the Harry Potter book where it's the last book and Hedwig dies, but they rewrote it? They like typed out a new thing. Oh my god, it's the okay, nope. We're not. It's been out for so long. If you don't know the Hedwig dies, sorry, sucks to suck. But when she dies, at the beginning of the last book, someone wrote out a different part, and they were like, oh, she like got up and looked at him and was kind of mad that like her cage was broken, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna go fly off for a while. And that like they like typed it up and taped it in. That is what we need someone to do. Just type up a little section that like near the end of where the satrap is of him getting eaten, and we'll all just tape it in our book, and that'll become the reality.
I want Malkin to eat him.
I kind of want Kelaro to be the one to eat him. Just like it's like this is Kelaro's thing.
Yeah.
Just like this is Kelaro's origin story, eating asshole men.
I wish that the
That would
satrap
also explain why Kelaro is so much of an asshole when he becomes Kahlo, because he just absorbs the satrap and becomes an ass and absorbs asshole traits.
I could see the satrap going to like Kelsingra and being like, this is actually my land, like you guys are on this, so all these dragons are actually mine, and then getting eaten by one of them. Like I could see them doing that.
Okay. Do we have anything else for the second part of the chapter, which is Althea, Keffria, Malta, Ronica? Okay, cool. Let's move back to the first half of this chapter, which is Amber and Althea talking. I love it because we see Jack. I forgot to mention this last chapter, but we see Jack for the first time. Love her, great. And at the start of the chapter, she's like, "Do you have any like brothers? Because man, your eyes are like wasted on a woman. You know, like she, like just shamelessly like hitting on Althea / Althea's family." And the funny part of that, I thought, is that later on, Amber is like so confused. Like, I'm trying to tell you these things, and I'm like, about the serpent and the dragon. I thought you would have a big reaction to it. Do you know what's going on here? And if Amber had let Jack just like keep talking to Althea might have been like, yeah, my cousin Wintro. And that would have that could have explained it to like that there's someone else that looks like you or like who's related to you out there who could be the person I'm looking for. But Amber is much too polite. She's like, Jack, you're bothering Althea. Stop it. And so the existence of Wintro never gets revealed.
I like Jack, but she is very one note. Like, her whole thing is just like hitting on bros.
She
That's true.
She's horny and she's strong. Her two character traits. Okay, but I do love her because when I first read Golden Fool, that scene where like she's like needling Fitz, like I was like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. Like it when she calls, like, for all intents and purposes, calls him an asshole. She knows that, like, the fool has a thing for him and he's clueless about it. And she's like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I love it. She's like talking about like, you know, I prefer like your face to Paragon's because I like your eyes better. And Fitz is like, what the fuck is this lady talking about?
Yeah.
There's like a description of her where she's like, she was like a large amused cat or something like that, just like being playful or whatever. And I love that description of her, and that was like stuck as like a thing for me with Jack, just like constantly just amused.
She's definitely one of those people where like you only picture her as like happy and maybe a little bit drunk.
Yeah. My like big note for this, or like not big note, but like my last note for this chapter is at the end of the conversation between Amber and Althea, where Amber like basically tries to convince Althea like stuff is important and we need your help to change it. like Althea's like, okay, all of what you say speaks to me not only of Bingtown but my family's predicament. And then Amber's like, okay, cool. If I've made you see those two things are connected, I have not wasted my time. And then later on at the end of that section, Althea's like, okay, I'm not sure if I can agree with Amber. I'm going to reach my own conclusions, but what's best for my family would come first. And I think that was really telling because Amber's like, okay, cool. As long as you can see that your family and Bingtown are linked, I don't care if you're going to do what's best for your family because that'll end up doing what's best for Bingtown if you're coming at it from that perspective. So, and then it was really frustrating because later on in the second half of the chapter, Althea, the tack that Althea tries to take is like, she gets back onto the same bullshit where she's like, I would be better with Vivacia, instead of being like, guys' slavery is bad in general. Mm-hmm. Like, if she just like opened up with the macro level thing instead of like, I can solve all our family's problems if you can give me a Vivacia. It's like, missing the point 101.
I think the reason that she kind of turns from that and goes more towards the like, I need to do what's in my family's best interest first is because Amber mentions like wanting to or trying to be in the process of buying Paragon. And that like turns Althea kind of away from listening fully.
Yeah.
Because she's like, well, you're not a traitor, so like you can't be part of this. You can't be in on our secrets.
We're just so stupid. Stupid traitor traditions.
Right.
Which like, but I also guess that like in a time where people who are not respecting of Bingtown culture are coming in, I can see how that could be a red flag with all the new traders and whatever.
And it's one of those things that like happen in real life too. It's like they have a knowledge and that is powerful because it's a secret and because it's like only given to certain people. That's why it's so powerful and that's what like makes them important. And if they were to share this with everyone else, then it would take away some of the mystery and it would make them less desirable.
Mm-hmm. Okay, do we have any other notes for this chapter?
I had one more note. It was just in reference to that stone dragon that Althea mentions. She says that there's an arrow in its chest. And it reminded me of when Swift kills Keeble Robretta's dragon with a wizardwood arrow.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking, like, there has to be some sort of connection between the wizardwood being connected to real dragons and that killing, like, the imitation dragons.
And she mentions that the arrow that's in the stone dragon that she sees is also wizardwood.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I didn't even think about the arrow long enough to think like if it was wizardwood or anything. Like I just glossed past it. I was like, oh, it's like a dragon. That's really cool. But like never went further with the arrow. And it makes sense that it would be a wizardwood arrow if it's lasted just as long as the stone dragon had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my question is like, who else would be making stuff out of wizardwood, right? Because my first thought was like, okay, they talk about like elderling wars in Rainwild Chronicles, right? Because you have like Rapskull like becoming that warlord and like channeling those memories. But like, would they make shit out of wizard? Would they make shit out of wizardwood? I don't feel like they would, right? Because like that would mean like killing the dragon inside the cocoon.
Yeah, I don't think they would ever.
So it's like, who could that be? Like a Claris thing? Like, who else would be going around making shit out of wizardwood, killing dragons?
Did they make something out of the wizardwood without killing the dragon? Like, if the thing is the whole cocoon, if they're just making arrows, couldn't they, like, slice off a little bit of the cocoon.
Well, I think the cocoon still holds memories and stuff of the dragon, so every little piece is important, and taking some away. Like, I think that the Elderlings saw the dragons as sacred, so like defacing any part of their, like the dragon's journey would be very frowned upon, if not like illegal. So it has to have been probably something like evil. And I can definitely see Clarice like figuring out something, or like buying a wizardwood arrow, or like wizardwood in general, after the fall of the Elderlings, and like once humans had kind of taken over the Rain Wilds, and then like exploring that without being able to know where it all came from, because I'm sure they would still be secret about that even back then.
Yeah, that's fair. I still wonder if we get like more information, because I feel like Rain and Tintaglia fly over the island at some point, or like the rest there.
Or yeah, I think they rest there, because I think, or like somewhere nearby, because I remember Rain, I think, talking about like all of the like sea bear skeletons or whatever being on the island.
God, I can only just imagine like sea bears, like giant tardigrades, because of how you saw it.
Yeah, that's exactly still how I picture them.
Mhm.
They're big and pink, and it's weird. But that's how it is.
Big and they're pink and it's weird. Okay, I think we can move along to chapter 12, Portrait of Vivacia. So, I don't remember if I said this in the episode last time, but I certainly said it in the chat afterwards. I was like, yeah, Brashen saw that this all happened last book. Don't worry about it. It did not, in fact, happen last book. So here, Brashen, in his new job as a pirate, goes to meet with the smuggler Sincure Falden, and sees a picture of Vivacia that was stolen from it during the capture of it, and through a chain of events ends up going to Divvytown and actually seeing Vivacia under Kenneth's control. And so with him now being aware that Vivacia has been captured, he can now take that back to Bingtown. There's also like an interlude here with Wintro. With Wintro and Kenneth and all the people aboard Vivacia, and sort of doing their thing there.
Is this is the chapter where everything with Brashen happens. There's no other chapter with Brashen in it, right?
Yeah.
So he sees Vivacia at the end, and he thinks that it's Althea on the ship. What does he think when he sees Wintro peeing off the side of her? Because he swears that, like,
he doesn't see that.
He does.
He does. That's what makes him swear.
That's why he swears, yeah. So, like, is that him, like, realizing it's not Althea and, like, wondering who it is? Or does he remember Wintro?
I mean, I think we'll know once we get to the section where he tells them. I think it's more of like a, wait a fucking second, that's not Althea.
Or I didn't know she could do that too. Her costume's really upgraded.
Fern turned and walked away, and once he turned around, he was like muttering that he was frustrated, and then Wintro peed off. So I didn't realize that he saw it.
Yeah. He like blames his swearing on like a not a paper cut, a splinter or something, but it's really because he saw Wintro. But I was so confused, and I like skipped ahead because I get nosy and I know the whole book, so I might as well skip ahead to see. And when he goes to see Althea, or like see at least the Vestrites, Malta opens the door and he just mistakes her for like a servant girl. So I'm assuming I didn't like read too far, and I just skimmed that section and like not the whole thing, just like that little piece. So I wonder if he doesn't know that it's Wintrow, or like doesn't remember that Wintrow is even a thing, because the whole time that Brashen worked upon Vivacia, Wintrow was like already in the monastery, so he probably just thinks of Malta and Selden as Keffria's kids, and like that she doesn't have a third oldest kid.
It's probably just like, that isn't Althea. And that's about it.
Yeah, or like he has to mention something to them so that they know that that Wintrow's alive. And he probably says like, "Oh yeah, Althea, I thought it was you."
I thought it was you until they started pissing off the side.
Right. And then they're like, "Oh, thank God, like Wintrow's alive."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I forgot how much Ronica was freaking out even before they found out that Vivacia had been captured. I'm pretty sure like Ronica's gonna like full body faint when she hears that.
I think so.
Like, she's already so stressed.
She can't handle anymore.
Mm-hmm. She is like basically completely emotionally shut down at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, speaking of Wintrow, Wintrow's getting a little angry in this section.
And a little violent too.
Uh-huh. Who are you, Wintrow? What happened to my sweet little boy?
He's becoming a man.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was so funny when he told Kyle that he stunk.
Yeah.
Kyle's complaining about the smell of something. He's like, it smells no worse than the stench of your own body.
They both have some banger lines. Like, Kyle was like, I wish there was a mirror in here so I could see if I look as stupid as you think I am. Like,
yeah.
Bars. Go off, Kyle.
The only note I had for Wintrow's section, like Wintrow's point of view section, was that both of the men he speaks to, he like thinks of in his mind as madmen, which is kind of true. Both of them are delusional for sure. Because he speaks to Kyle and then Saadar kind of like traps him for a second until he beats his ass.
But I mean, it is interesting though. But the reason that he thinks of both of them as madmen is because they have like these like false worldviews that are like super insular.
They're out of touch with reality.
And at the end, there's the part where he's like, it was the only time that Wintrow had run away from the truth. So like, you gotta say, like, Wintrow is definitely better than these people morally, but in terms of like self-actualizing or like having like a proper self-image, is he much better? Is sort of the question that's coming up. But like, he doesn't just beat up Saadar. He's like, "Don't talk to me again, or I'll kill you." Like, I forgot he says that shit. Are you kidding me, Wintrow?
The threat was so wild because, like, I didn't know Wintrow had it in him. He accidentally gets Torg killed, and he like is so shocked and upset about it, and now he's threatening Saadar's life. Like, okay, this is actually Wintrow's glow up from pushover to like threatening figure.
But it's also a little bit worrisome because this is how his father wants him to act, right? This is how Kyle has always wanted him to
be how he is in this section.
Yeah. So it's like, on one hand, we do like a more assertive Wintrow. On the other hand, this is not the kind of assertiveness that represents who Wintrow is.
Yeah.
Though don't get me wrong, I do like seeing Saadar get his ass beat. That too.
Me too.
But yeah.
Especially by Wintrow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care for the threat after, but I do like a light beating.
A light beating.
As a treat.
Yeah.
Okay, continuing like the theme of like accepting who you are, that becomes a big thing with Kenneth, because Wintrow like says that to him and does like a little bit of skill healing, I think during the skill healing, like Winthrop, like it feels like he transfers his confidence, or like somehow like skill like gives him the confidence of acceptance or whatever. And Kenneth finally is like, oh yeah, okay, that's just a part of me that's gone. The shape of my body has changed, but I'm still here. And like with just those few words and that one skill healing, like Winthrop sort of like restores Kenneth to his former self.
He accepts his sausage leg.
Yes, and it is a sausage. Did you guys see?
Kenneth describes his leg as a badly stuffed sausage. I have that in all caps here.
It is a sausage. I told you he's got a sausage leg. You guys didn't believe me. I
think it was less didn't believe, and it was more like didn't want a picture.
It is a sausage leg. Going back to what you said about Winthrop, though, with the skill, I think it was a mix of Wintrop's wisdom with Vivacia, like her attempt at the beginning to rationalize and like take away his like suspicions and irrationality helped him like have some mental space for Wintrop's wisdom to come and like settle in within himself and like change the way that he acts. I think it was definitely like they unintentionally tag teamed to wisen up Kenneth.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of that, like irrationality and stuff, I think it's like really pointedly described as like he's like defiant. He wants his fury to be justified, and most importantly, it's like childlike. And I think if you're quick on the draw, you could connect like Kenneth's like impulsivity and these changing moods to how Paragon acts, and be like, huh, there's something there. Like obviously, we're doing like a reread, so it's super obvious. But like, I didn't realize like how much she like fed in for that.
Well, and the amount of times that he mentions his luck and all of that, and the fact that Paragon's family's name is Ludluck. Like, I feel like that's such, on a reread, that's such a strong connection. But on a first read, I don't think I would have paid any attention to that. Because I also don't think that, like, I was intrigued enough about Kenneth's, like, hidden underlying things to dig that deep. I think there were so many other things going on and so many other perspectives to kind of get sucked into that you don't notice the subtle things. But if it was like a first person perspective just from Kenneth of this whole story, I think then people would be much more like inclined to figure things out about him sooner.
I would have been inclined to stop reading. Not gonna lie. I think the only thing that like a reader could pick up on a first read is like there's the line last book where it's like the luck in his name or whatever, and that one is pretty pointed. But everything else is sort of like it's hard to pick up on a first read.
Yeah.
I'm like increasingly amazed on because this is my first reread of this trilogy. But just like the first time I read it, I wasn't able to predict really any of the connections that we find out about. But on a reread, it's so obvious. So the way that Hobb toes that line between like foreshadowing enough that it's really obvious to rereaders, but not enough that it's obvious to new readers. So amazed by how well she does that every time I pick up on one of those hints or clues.
Yeah, I love it.
And it's because she writes those sections similarly, but like you just aren't primed to pick up on it because the characters are like on the other fucking side of the world, like within the story.
Yeah.
But honestly, like from the first trilogy, we should have learned like distance doesn't matter because skill.
Mm-hmm.
This is also the first chapter and section in this trilogy that we get of Egrat being linked to a live ship. Because I call him Feeney, but I can't remember what his real name is. The captain of like Brashen's ship, he says that like Kennet's not the first pirate to have a live ship. That Egrat actually did it first.
Mm-hmm. Which is huge, like a huge bombshell. Because
you would think that Brashen would kind of be able to tie that to Paragon. Just because Paragon kind of went off the rails so many times and was like missing for a while. But I wonder if that happened a little bit before his time. Because I think that Kennet's like, I picture Kennet as being like 40 and Brashen and them are like mid-20s. So maybe it was a whole generation before Brashen, and that's why he's only ever known Paragon as being beached and not as like this disappearing live ship.
I think you're right.
Any other notes for this chapter?
Not from me.
I had 2, I think. Kennet is like looking at Wintro and like asking about his tattoo and like if he like why Kyle would do that. And Kennet's like, it was obvious his father had never bothered to explain it. And the reason that Kyle like doesn't explain it is because it wasn't even his doing. It was like Torg's. So like I think if Wintro were to ask Kyle about it, like Kyle would just brush it off because he doesn't want to admit that it was like a mistake and an accident and that it wasn't even like his idea to do it. He would just give some like vague excusey, brush it off and insult him instead of like admit.
Mm-hmm. And so one of those things where like I don't think even Kyle knows why he does what he does, other than I mean the root of it is just to exercise control and be cruel. But like he doesn't want to admit that to even himself. He's just like, so he'd like bluster through it with like, the children need to listen to their parents, and I'm the parent, and that makes what do right.
Yeah. Self-reflection is not Kyle's strong suit.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not sure there is anything that is Kyle's strong suit except for being a bad, abusive father.
Mm-hmm. Must be like pretty good in the sack because he has Keffria whipped.
I mean, he's supposed to have like he's supposed to be like a blonde hottie, right? Like he's supposed to like he's got like that chiseled Chalcedian face or whatever.
He's also all she's ever known though, so he could be horrible, and she would just think that's what it's supposed to feel like.
That's a very good point.
So might not even be good there. Speaking of the sack though, kind of very yucky that Kennet gets so detailed in his observations of Wintro and then turns around and finishes with Edda. It's like, I just felt very gross. I did not like that. I didn't like it.
But it's like also very weird because Wintro reminds him so much of his young self. So it's like, you just want to fuck yourself?
It's all yucky and
because his thing is I'm gonna become the one in control, so I'm gonna become Egrat, and if I'm becoming Egrat like yeah,
and it's gross.
Yeah. It's the rooted from some like deep ass trauma, but that doesn't make it any less gross.
Yeah,
right.
I had one more note, and it was in the section with Brashen, and he was thinking to himself about like his time on Vivacia, and he said the ship's boy Mild had had the makings of a top-notch sailor if his love of mischief hadn't killed him first. And I was like, oh, Brashen. It was not the mischief that killed him.
No.
And I felt sad about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rough. But that's all I had.
I don't think I have any other.
Okay. I think our last two chapters in this section are gonna be pretty quick. We're really a front-loaded episode this time. But we're moving on to summer. This is chapter 13, Interlude. You know what that means. We're back with serpents. Malkin's depressed. Everyone's depressed. They've got a bigger tangle now, but like they're sort of aimless still. However, Malkin, one of the serpents decides to do an impromptu sonata, and Malkin's like, "Hey, that reminds me of our past. This one remembers," and like gets into a toxin spewing match with some of the other serpents and stirs them to remember themselves.
Ever since you said Sonata, all I can picture is the serpent singing Frank Sinatra because you said Sinatra
Because of Sinatra.
Sinatra. It's only fitting. It's only fitting that the serpent bellows out some Frank Sinatra.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny that we all three had the same single note for the chapter, which was the blue serpent is Halo or Kahlo.
Mm-hmm.
That was all I had as well.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh, he's blue, he's big, it's him, it's the boy.
Bluey beast or whatever, blue beauty.
Blue glory?
Yeah.
Now I shall call you meat.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best. That's my favorite quote from this trilogy, I think. I love it so much. Or from this, from Rain Wilds, not this trilogy.
Also, I love Rain Wilds because Rain Wilds, like, this trilogy, like, villains get off real light. In Rain Wilds, every villain gets, like, a fucking dressing down. Like, they get the just desserts they deserve.
Also, there's a lightness to Rain Wilds that is not in, I feel like, any of the other series. Like, I don't know, it's more warm-hearted or something. I don't know how to describe it, but
I think also we kind of see villains getting more justice and what they deserve closer to the end of the whole like series and everything like that, because at the beginning evil is so strongly rooted in the world and like Clarice is like taken over, and then with the return of the dragons it's like the return of actual justice and the dragons are actually enacting the justice, so they allow the villains to get what they deserve instead of the villains getting off with like a little slap on the wrist or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I like that a lot because again, like, we can be realistic but also acknowledge that like this is a fantasy series, and like if your theme is about how we can change the world, let's actually change the world. Like, come on now. Yeah, and anyways, chapter 14, the last chapter in this section. We basically already discussed this in our first chapter.
Yeah. I forgot, like, I knew I hated him. I forgot how deeply I hate him, Cosgo. Like, I think I hate him as much, if not more, than Kyle and Kenneth.
Mm.
At least Kyle and Kenneth, like, kind of take fate into their own hands or, like, have their own strong ideas. Cosgo literally just does whatever the nobles or the Chalcidians tell him is cool. Like,
I think my list of hatred goes Ronica, Cosgo, Kyle, Kenneth. Or Kenneth and Kyle are together.
This better be from like least to most.
Top. Ronica is the freaking top. Right now, I hate her. I just can't.
I hate her too, but not the most.
She's
hate her. I hope that she redeems herself in the next book, but like she's on the top of my list.
What do you mean you hope?
I haven't flabbergasted.
Look, I just don't like her right now, you guys.
A Facebook group that's like, I hate Ronica Vestrit.
Yeah. I hate her like I don't like Starling, like she pisses me off and stuff like that. But like I hate Ronica, I think.
Yeah.
But I think I will like her again. I really fucking hope so. But honestly, I don't know right now, you guys.
I feel like, was I like high the first time I read these books? Because I liked Ronica.
Me too. I really liked her the whole time.
I think it's because we get her perspective pretty early on, and she's presented as the reasonable one. So you sort of like take a lot of the stuff that she's saying at face value.
Yes. And you're in her head, and you see all the ways she justifies it, and then you're kind of convinced.
And Malta seems so much more annoying the first time around. So you're like, oh, like, she hates Malta. I'm definitely on her side. And now we see Malta for, like, the child that she is. And fucking Ronica.
Anyways, that's a great place to end this episode on. Send us your hot takes on the characters you hate more in this series.
Hot takes and fanfic. That is what we are accepting.
That's what we want.
And if you can find a way to combine both of those, more power to you.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, until next time, see y'all.
Bye.
Bye.